The quest is to find meaning to life. And more than ever before, our passage could sound hopeless if you don't watch one thing. What is that a picture of? Work, because work is repetitious. Work is the same almost every day, and you can feel like the rat race. Friends, kids, what will I do? I used to use this frequently. I have to use a converter to play it because it's a Windows media file. But I spared no expense and I converted the file. I won't make you do it, but the kids used to act out the gerbil race. I'd like to talk about a verse not in our section. And he said, "This is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and I will store all my grain and goods there. And I will say to myself, you have many goods stored up for many years to come. Relax, eat, drink, and enjoy yourself." Luke 12. I'm going to be brave and do some interaction. What is this talking about? What is this from? This is the audience participation part of the show.
Parable of the man who tore down his barn.
Yes, parable of the rich man who tore down his barns. Note that Jesus says, yes, a person is a fool to store up wealth and not have a rich relationship with God. So a paraphrase from Luke 12:21. Note that Jesus condemns the man's selfishness and his exclusion of God, I-type form, from his worldview, not the enjoyment of the fruits of his labor. Many people in the Bible were righteous and rich. Can you name one? Righteous and rich. Can you name one? Job? Yes, okay. I thought of Abraham. Lydia. He's living his life under the sun. That's the phrase I'm repeating, under the sun, not from a heavenly perspective. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Our sermon starts in 1:4 and will include verses up till 1:11. To prove that point, that we have nothing to show from all our effort, he speaks of the natural world: earth, wind, fire, and water. Generations come and go. Meanwhile, the earth itself remains the same. I didn't tell you I would quiz you, but you're the focus of my attention. You'll do fine. Do you have a relative that came over on the Mayflower?
Yes, I do.
Yes, she does. Do you remember the name? You don't have to.
James? No, I don't remember the last name.
But she has a relative that came over on the Mayflower. Wow. How many years ago is this? 1620.
Yes, that's a
401 years ago. Wow. How has North America changed in 401 years? Considerably. Name some. Name some changes.
Oh, well, we have electricity,
Yes.
moving vehicles of all types,
Yes.
and on the ground,
Yes. And in space, yes.
entire continent,
Okay. And generations come and go. One generation might be rising, but at the same time, another one is dying off. The picture tells the story. The generation gap never seems to change either. It seems that one generation is out of touch in just a few years with another. Music, media, songs, language, slang. I never feel as old as when I talk to my children, because I'm out of touch. Princess Diana, Winston Churchill, JFK, Natalie Wood. Do you recognize these names? Prince Philip. All die. All have died. But you're still here. Also, the sun rises and the sun sets, and hurrying to its place, it rises there again. The book has a basis on the Bible verse, the sun also rises. He's in Spain talking about bullfights. Hurrying is the translation, smooth translation of to pant. To pant. If you're exerting yourself, if you are running, jogging, what do? Breathe hard. The sun is pictured as racing back from east to west and back again to start the day. Blowing toward the south, then turning toward the north. The wind continues swirling along. On its circular courses, the wind returns. We see satellite pictures of the wind swirling. All the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers flow, they flow again. The sun evaporates water, you know the water cycle. No one, all things are wearisome. No one can tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. I put the first one up, but what are sources of media for you? I've got Comcast because we have Comcast. What are sources of media? Newspaper? Internet? What flavors of internet? Netflix. Facebook. BBC, yes? Oh, I thought you had your hand up. What? Hulu? Netflix, YouTube, iPhone, Samsung, TV, CDs. Remember CDs? And social media. Social media will get you in trouble more often than not. even after all our looking and listening. Our eyes, I mistyped. Our eyes and ears are still not satisfied. We want to hear and see more. We can never get enough of Facebook, Instagram, anime. We can never be satisfied. I don't know how much time you spend on your phone. I don't know how much time you spend on the internet. I don't know how much time you spend listening to music. I listen to news most frequently, but I never get enough. I always want more. And it's based on the Bible. The eye's not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. So as it has been, it still is. What has been done, it is what will be. And what has been done, it is what will be done, so there is nothing new under the sun. This perspective is important. Remember, Solomon is seeing only as far as the sun. On my perspective, Solomon has forgotten God. He repents and comes back, but he's forgotten God. And not next week's sermon on 1:12 through 18, but the balance of the book of Ecclesiastes shows how much he's forgotten God, how much he's replaced God with what he's been told, what makes sense to him, and what he's heard from others. But he's not going beyond under the sun. If you live only beneath the sun, there's no meaning to life. It's repetitious. It can be boring. It will be unsatisfying. It's an endless, wearisome, nagging cycle. Is there anything of which one might say, "See this, it is new"? It has already existed for ages, which was before us. Cynical, isn't it? There's no doubt that cynicism is a characteristic of Western society. We've done it before. We'll do it again. There's no reason for life. Rudyard Kipling wrote, "The craft that we call modern, the crimes that we call new, John Bunyan had them typed and filed in 1682. That's very true. There is no remembrance of the earlier things, and of the later things as well, which will occur. There will be no remembrance of them among those who will come later still. He who has not learned from history is destined to repeat it. We speak of earlier things, not earlier people. People are not under criticism. The whole world system without God is under criticism. We are dealing with history more generally. There is no remembrance of the earlier things and of the later things as well, which will occur. There will be no remembrance of them among those who will come later still." Have a quote, "People forget what they want to forget." And this is very true. how quickly people forget. What Ecclesiastes describes is a sort of historical amnesia. I like that phrase, historical amnesia. We tend to think that the earth ends and it's sine qua non of American history. We tend to think of the USA as the first great civilization of North America. But more than 1,000 years ago, the Anasazi peoples were loving, fighting, living, and dying. They built 5-story dwellings with hundreds of rooms. The Chukotkia people built a community near St. Louis. They've excavated and think that there's at least 40,000 people of their society living near St. Louis. There's many other civilizations as well. The Chinese thought of everything before we did, before Europeans did. Derek Kidner said, "The function of Ecclesiastes is to bring us to the point where we begin to fear that such a comment, all is futility, is the only honest one. It's leaving God out of it for the moment. God is included in Solomon's writings for the first time in chapter 1, verses 12 through 18, when he talks about wisdom. And that's the focus of next week's study. Where is God? Who is God? And why should I consider God? For us, if there is nothing under the sun, our only hope must be above it, beyond it. And his people, the Jewish people, had forgotten the truth of Deuteronomy 5:15. They had been transformed by God's outstretched hand. Deuteronomy 5:15. You shall remember. Remembering the past, remembering the near past, having a cultural memory, not historical amnesia, as we talked about, but having cultural memory, especially of God's things, is important. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of the land with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. I'd like to read the story about Salvatore Succumante, because he had a job like no other job before. He took home, he was in Italy, he took home almost $650,000 in 15 years. That was his salary. But Salvatore Succumante did not do a day's work for more than 15 years. Authorities in Italy have placed 6 employees at the hospital he worked at under investigation for abuse of office after they allegedly allowed him, he was 67 by the time it was discovered, to get away with his scheme for well over a decade. Italy's financial police, the Guardia di Finanza, said in a statement that he had been assigned to work in the fire safety department of the hospital in Cantazzanario a small city on Italy's southern coast. But they said that, quote, he never went to work for 15 years while getting his salary, unquote. His ruse was uncovered when investigators examined his attendance and telephone records and spoke to some of his colleagues. He's under investigation of alleged fraud. It hasn't adjudicated itself. And extortion, allegedly for threatening other people, his line managers to keep quiet, the statement said. 15 years he never went to work. And nobody noticed. Nobody cared enough to make him go to work. Nobody cared enough to tell him hello. Nobody cared enough to do anything. It's alleged he bribed some people, and after he'd been gone from work for so many years, 10 years, he started fielding questions. And, you'll get in trouble, not just me. And so he used this. He even bribed some people to keep quiet. So he made more money than his salary. Life under the sun is frustrating, boring, and I told this illustration so you'd see he can say, it doesn't matter what I do. I get paid anyway. Only life under God's hand, under God's leadership, under God's responsibility, under our responsibility to God really matters. It's easy to be cynical. It's easy to be frustrated. It's easy to spend a lot of time, and our man will indicate that it doesn't matter what he did. He went to work only one day, and it didn't matter what he done with the rest of the time. But only life, not under the sun, but under heaven, under God, matters.